Picture this. You're sitting at a stoplight with your better half, riding shotgun. A guy pulls up next to you, gives you a thumbs up, and shouts, "Hey, that is one hell of a smoke show." At that moment, you might start wondering exactly which smoke show he's talking about. The beautiful person sitting next to you, or that classic 6.9 liter IDI diesel under your hood, puffing out those proud city clouds. Heck, for some of you watching, you might even be the smoke show yourself. But either way, you're smiling because let's face it, classic beauty always turns heads. Howdy folks, Ed here. Welcome back to Bullnose Garage, and these days, the diesel scene is all polished chrome, turbos bigger than my head, and injectors with price tags that make grown men weep. It seems like every diesel clattering down Main Street's a high-tech, high-dollar rig, built more for Instagram likes than actual hard work. Now, hey, don't get me wrong, I love newfangled horsepower as much as anyone else, but today we're leaving those shiny new toys parked at the curb. Instead, we're stripping things down and getting back to diesel's smoky roots by celebrating an engine that earned its legendary status through sheer stubbornness and ironclad reliability. Long before diesel trucks started wearing suits and ties, sipping DEF cocktails, or worrying about emissions tests, the 6.9 IDI was the engine that defined durability and simplicity. Sure, she might not top dyno charts straight out of the gate, but what the 6.9 lacks in raw horsepower, it more than makes up for with bulletproof reliability, easy wrenchability, and enough low-end torque to drag your neighbor's Chevy out of a ditch. Again.
Hello.
Now, a lot of folks assume this was Ford's first attempt at a diesel pickup, but that's not quite true. Back in the 60s and 70s, Ford dabbled in diesels by offering the Detroit Diesel 453 two-stroke in some of their medium dirty trucks. But let's be honest, medium dirty trucks? Ooh, you dirty truck. Two-stroke in some of their medium-duty trucks. But let's be honest, unless you were into screaming, high-revving, low-torque engines that sounded like an old city bus, it wasn't exactly a home run. That thing had all the refinement of a chainsaw and a metal trash can. And while it had its place in larger commercial rigs, it wasn't what pickup owners were really looking for. It wasn't until the early 1980s that Ford finally got serious about giving its light and medium-duty truck customers a real diesel engine that actually made sense. By the late 70s and early 80s, truck owners were demanding more torque, better fuel economy, and engines that could actually last under constant heavy loads. And that's something that gas engines just really weren't delivering. Ford knew they needed a diesel option to compete with GM's 6.2 liter Detroit diesel, which launched in 1982. But they had one problem. They didn't have a diesel engine ready to go. Instead of starting from scratch, Ford partnered with International Harvester, a company with decades of experience building diesels for farm equipment, heavy trucks, and industrial machinery. At the time, IH had already designed the 6.9 liter IDI for medium-duty trucks and agricultural use, but they needed a manufacturer to bring it to the light-duty truck market, and Ford was the perfect fit. Together, the two companies adapted the engine for pickup use, reinforcing the block, redesigning the oil pan, and tweaking the fuel system for better cold weather starting. And while some folks assume that Ford owned International Harvester, that was never the case. It was a strategic partnership. Ford got a purpose-built diesel for their F-Series trucks, and International Harvester expanded its footprint in the light truck market. It was a definite win-win for both companies. And Ford and IH weren't taking any chances when it came to durability either. Before the 6.9 IDI ever hit the market, it went through brutal real-world testing in some of the harshest environments imaginable. Engineers put prototypes through their paces in the Rocky Mountains, the extreme cold of Alaska, and the scorching heat of the Southwest to ensure that the engine could handle everything from frigid mornings to high-altitude towing. And these tests helped refine the cooling system, injection timing, and glow plug reliability before it ever landed in a production truck. What truly made the 6.9 special wasn't massive horsepower or high-tech wizardry, it was that brute force simplicity and easy maintenance. It was built like a tank. Cast iron block, cast iron heads, no complex electronics, and an injection system that could take a beating. It was naturally aspirated, meaning that there was no turbo to worry about failing, and it used indirect injection, or IDI, a decision that prioritized reliability over cutting-edge efficiency. It wasn't the most powerful diesel out there, but it was one of the toughest. IDI, or indirect injection, means fuel is injected into a pre-chamber before reaching the main combustion chamber. This setup made for smoother, quieter operation compared to indirect injection diesels, but it did sacrifice some efficiency as heat was lost in this process. Still, for its time, IDI was a proven design that focused on durability over outright performance. Now, the 6.9 IDI for Ford ran from 83 to 87 before being replaced by the 7.3 IDI, which kept the same core design but with a larger bore and refinements to cooling and glow plug systems. But here's the thing, even today, decades after production ended, the 6.9 is still a fan favorite. This engine laid the foundation for everything that came after it, including the 7.3 IDI, and eventually, the legendary 7.3 Power Stroke. And for a lot of guys, that makes it one of the most important engines that Ford ever put in a truck. The 6.9-liter IDI diesel packs 420 cubic inches, which is 6.9 liters, of displacement. And Ford didn't get there by accident. With a 4-inch bore and a 4.18-inch stroke, this is an under-square engine, meaning the stroke is longer than the bore. And that right there is the key to why this thing pulls like a freight train, but doesn't care much for high RPMs. It was built for grunt, not speed. The long stroke delivers tons of low-end torque, which is exactly what you want for towing, hauling, and crawling up a steep grade with a fully loaded trailer behind you. The engine is all cast iron all the time, from the block to the heads, which is a big part of why it's known for being damn near indestructible. But all that iron doesn't come without a cost. Fully dressed, the 6.9 IDI tips the scales at about 920 pounds, significantly heavier than a comparable gas engine. So if you're thinking about swapping into a lighter truck, don't forget you'll need to beef up your front springs, cross member, and suspension, unless you enjoy bottoming out over speed bumps, or pretty much all the time. The early versions in 83 and 84 ran a 20.7 to 1 compression ratio, which produced 161 horsepower at 3,300 RPM and 307 foot-pound of torque at 1,400 RPM. But starting in 1985, Ford and International Harvester bumped it up to 21.5 to 1 to improve cold start performance and efficiency. This change also slightly increased torque output to 315 foot-pounds at 1,400 RPM. This kind of compression is why it builds torque so well, but it's also why glow plugs are absolutely necessary for cold starts. There's just no getting around it. Internally, it's built tough with a strong cast iron crankshaft designed to handle long-term abuse. The firing order, 1, 2, 7, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, matches classic Ford big blocks like the 429 and 460, as well as non-HO small blocks like the early 302 and 351 Cleveland. So if you've worked on those engines before, at least that part will feel familiar. From the factory, Ford stuffed the 6.9-liter IDI into the F250s and F350s, and if you were hauling people instead of cargo, you could also find it in the Econoline vans from 83 to 87. These trucks were built for heavy-duty work, so Ford paired them with transmissions that could handle the abuse, like the T19 4-speed manual, which is basically a tank gearbox, or the C6 automatic, a bulletproof 3-speed. Over its production run, Ford made a few minor tweaks, including upgraded glow plug reliability and slight cooling improvements, but for the most part, the 6.9 stuck to the script. Simple, reliable, and just built to work. So if you're thinking about a swap, why would you rip out your trusty 351 Windsor or big block 460 to put in a 6.9 IDI diesel? Simple. Torque and economy. Gas engines have their perks. They rev faster, they're snappier, and they sound great at wide open throttle. But you hook up a heavy trailer and watch that gas needle drop like a rock. The 6.9 doesn't flinch under load. It makes steady, low-end torque all day long, and diesel fuel economy under towing conditions is miles ahead of a gas engine. Plus, there are just fewer electronics to deal with, so you're not chasing sensors and computers every time something goes wrong. And then there's the sound. If you've never heard an IDI at idle, it's got a mechanical chug that's completely different from anything else on the road. It doesn't have a deep grunt of a Power Stroke or the sharp bark of a Cummins. It's more of a rolling lope that just says, "I'm ready, boss, let's get her done." And if you slap turbo on it, that whistle, mixed with the IDI's classic diesel clatter, it's just one of the most satisfying truck sounds out there. One of the coolest things about the 6.9-liter IDI is that it's not picky about fuel. This thing was built in an era before modern diesel emission systems and sensitive electronic controls, and that means it can burn just about anything that combusts. Thanks to its old school mechanical injection system, you can run it on waste motor oil, used vegetable oil, biodiesel, and even filtered transmission fluid blends. As long as it's filtered properly and the fuel system is maintained, the 6.9 will happily chug along like it doesn't even know the difference. That's why these engines have become a favorite among off-grid truck owners, preppers, and anyone looking to cut fuel costs while keeping old diesel on the road. It's not just as simple as pulling up to a back door of a greasy spoon. Running alternative fuels requires some setup. You need things like heated fuel systems for cold weather operation, extra filtration, and regular maintenance to prevent injector coking and carbon buildup. It's a great way to save money and keep an old IDI running for cheap, but it's not completely set and forget. If you're willing to do the work, though, the 6.9 will reward you by running on fuels that would make modern common rail diesels throw an absolute tantrum. So if you're thinking about swapping a 6.9 IDI into a truck that originally had a gas engine, know this: it's not a weekend bolt-in. This engine is significantly heavier than a gas V8. It means you'll need heavier duty front suspension components, possibly beefier axles, and a diesel-specific fuel tank, since gas tanks don't have the correct return system for diesel fuel. The fuel lines need to be revised, the cooling system need to be upgraded, and depending on your transmission, you might need a new clutch, bell housing, or an entirely different unit to handle the torque. If you're starting with something that originally came with a small block, you're looking at a decent amount of fabrication work. But here's the flip side. When you're done, you'll have a truck that pulls like a beast, sips fuel compared to a gas guzzler, and will likely outlive you. If you do it right, a properly swapped 6.9 IDI turns your truck into an unstoppable workhorse. You get unmatched reliability, impressive fuel efficiency under load, and an engine that doesn't rely on a single sensor to keep running. Plus, you get the sound. And let's be honest, that's worth something on its own. So if you don't have one and you've made up your mind you're going diesel, all right, that's a solid choice. But now here's the real question: why the 6.9? After all, it's not the only game in town. There are other options, even in the same family, like the 7.3 IDI. Bigger, right? Maybe you're eyeing a Cummins 5.9 or 4BT. GM fans will tell you the 6.2 or 6.5 is a solid pick. And if you really want to go off the deep end, you could even slap in a Perkins, just to confuse everyone at the next truck meet. So why would the 6.9 IDI be at the top of your list? Well, let's start with the 7.3 because it's the natural evolution of the 6.9. It's basically the same engine, just bumped up to 444 cubic inches, which is 7.3 liters, with slightly more horsepower and torque to go with it. It's got some refinements to cooling and glow plug reliability, but here's the thing: it's not some massive performance leap over the 6.9. In all honesty, in most real-world applications, they feel pretty similar. The downside is that even though the 7.3 IDI engines tend to be easier to find, clean, low-mileage ones are actually really hard to come by because so many of them were worked to death in fleet use. If simplicity, affordability, and ease of maintenance are your main priorities, then the 6.9 still holds its ground without giving up that much in performance. Then there is the Cummins 5.9 liter 12 valve, probably the most famous diesel swap of all time. And there's no denying that the 5.9 is a beast. It's got legendary reliability, insane torque potential, great fuel economy, aftermarket support that makes Ford and GM guys green with envy. But here's the catch: it's big, it's heavy, and it's expensive. If you're planning to stuff one of those into a Bullnose, be ready for some serious fabrication work. The oil pan, motor mounts, transmission adapter, front cross member, suspension upgrades all need to be dialed in. And that's before you even get into wiring and plumbing the turbo. If you want the ultimate performance diesel swap and don't mind spending extra time and money, then a Cummins 5.9 is pretty hard to beat. But if you're looking for something easier to install and maintain, the 6.9 IDI is a far simpler, more budget-friendly option. Okay, so let's talk about the GM diesels, 6.2 and 6.5 liter. They're not terrible. They do have decent fuel economy, but let's just say they don't exactly have the best reputation. They were light-duty diesels, so they weren't built with the same kind of brute strength as a Cummins or even a 6.9 IDI. They're known for being a little bit weaker and having weaker internals, lower torque output, and just generally not being built for serious long-haul abuse. The upside is that they're cheap. And if you find one in good shape, it might be worth considering, But if longevity, power, and dependability are what you're really after, then the 6.9 is just a tougher engine all around. And then, just for fun, there's the Perkins. If you've never heard of them, you're not alone. Perkins makes some of the toughest industrial and agricultural diesel engines out there, found in everything from tractors to generators. And yeah, some people have crammed them into pickup trucks. But should you? Probably not. First off, Perkins engines were built for tractors and industrial equipment, not for highway cruising. They're slow revving, underpowered, and parts can be a real nightmare to track down. Plus, swapping one in usually means custom mounts, custom adapters, a lot of head scratching when things don't quite line up. If you're going for something quirky and unique, well then, yeah, it'd be kind of fun. But if you just want a solid diesel swap that makes sense, the 6.9 just wins on practicality alone. All of this is to say that if you're thinking about swapping your gasser for a diesel, the 6.9 IDI absolutely deserves a spot on your shortlist. So here's the part in the video where I say something like, but let's be real, no engine is completely bulletproof. The 6.9 is damn tough, but it does have quirks, and knowing what to watch out for is a key to keeping it running strong for a good long time. So we'll start with glow plugs. If you ask any IDI owner what'll leave you stranded first, the answer is a bad glow plug system. Unlike common rail diesels that rely on high pressure fuel injection to atomize fuel, the 6.9 IDI needs a good set of glow plugs to fire up properly, especially in cold weather. When they fail, you'll be cranking forever, praying to the diesel gods, and probably killing your batteries in the process. The fix is to stick with high quality glow plugs like Motorcraft or Diesel RX. Avoid the cheap ones that swell up and snap off inside the heads, because pulling a broken glow plug out of an IDI head is not how you want to spend your weekend. Then there's a lift pump. Unlike modern diesels with electronic lift pumps, the 6.9 liter IDI relies on a mechanical lift pump to feed fuel from the tank into the injection pump. It is simple and reliable until it isn't. When it fails, you're not limping home, you are dead in the water. That's why a lot of IDI owners swap into an electric pump for better reliability, easier cold starts, and less hassle when priming the system after a filter change. If you plan on running alternative fuels, an electronic pump also helps keep things flowing more smoothly. Speaking of fuel delivery, let's talk about the heart of that system, the Stanadyne DB2 injection pump. This thing is a workhorse, but just like anything mechanical, it does wear out over time. If your IDI starts idling rough, losing power, or becoming hard to start, there's a good chance your injection pump is getting a little bit tired. Another common issue is injector return line leaks. These little rubber hoses get brittle over time, and when they crack, they let air into the system, leading to hard starts, especially after sitting overnight. The good news is that return line kits are cheap. They're pretty easy to install, and they will save you a ton of frustration. If you just picked up an old IDI and it's a pain to start in the morning, check those first. Now, when it comes to aftermarket upgrades, the 6.9 IDI diesel has a surprising amount of support, especially if you're looking to wake it up with a turbocharger. If there's one thing the IDI crowd can agree on, it's that these engines love a turbo, if you do it right. The 6.9 was designed as a naturally aspirated diesel, so slapping a turbo on without supporting mods is a great way to cook your exhaust valves, spike your EGTs, which is exhaust gas temperatures, and blow a head gasket. But if you take the right approach, a turbo transforms the 6.9 from a reliable workhorse into an entirely different animal. The Bank Sidewinder and ATS turbo kits were some of the most popular period-correct upgrades, and they remain excellent options today. A properly tuned turbocharged 6.9 can push well over 200 horsepower and north of 400 foot-pounds of torque pretty easily, while maintaining the old-school IDI reliability that makes these engines so appealing. But if you're serious about adding boost, it's highly recommended to upgrade your fuel system to provide additional fuel delivery, install a pyrometer gauge to monitor those EGTs, and swap in ARP head studs to keep the heads clamped down tight. Factory head bolts are known to stretch under boost, and keeping an eye on exhaust gas temperatures is critical to preventing melted pistons or valve damage. All that said, when it's set up properly, a turbocharged IDI is an absolute blast to drive. And beyond turbocharging, there are plenty of other upgrades that you can do to improve the reliability and drivability of your IDI. Swapping in an aftermarket electronic fuel pump, like a Carter P4070 or Facet Duralift, eliminates the need for the factory mechanical lift pump, makes the fuel system priming easier, and ensures consistent fuel pressure. Upgraded glow plug controllers can eliminate slow cold starts, and enhanced fuel filtration systems help keep contaminants out of the injectors, reducing wear and improving longevity. Cooling system upgrades like high-capacity radiators, heavy-duty water pumps, and improved fans are also pretty valuable additions, especially for anyone towing heavy loads or operating in hot climates. Yeah, stock 6.9 is a solid, dependable engine right out of the gate, but a few well-chosen upgrades can make it even better and let the 6.9 IDI keep up with much newer diesel engines while still maintaining that old-school toughness, simplicity, and sound. And one of the biggest improvements you can make for drivability isn't part of the engine itself, it's pairing the 6.9 with an overdrive transmission. The ZF5 5-speed manual is one of the best upgrades over the stock T19. It provides a better spread of gears and, most importantly, an overdrive for highway cruising. I mean, the T19 is a solid transmission, but with only 4 forward gears and no overdrive, it leaves the 6.9 kinda screaming at highway RPMs on long stretches of road. The ZF5 solves that issue, makes the truck far more comfortable at speed, and it improves fuel efficiency too. If you want to stick with an automatic, adding a gear vendor's overdrive unit to the existing C6 transmission can be a game changer. The C6 is a nearly indestructible 3-speed, but it lacks overdrive, meaning highway driving can get expensive. A gear vendor's unit splits the gears and adds an overdrive function, reduces RPMs, improves fuel economy, and makes those long-haul trips way more manageable. When you look at the legacy of the 6.9-liter IDI diesel, it's clear that this engine laid the foundation for Ford's later diesel success. It directly led to the 7.3 IDI, which refined the platform with more displacement and cooling improvements, and eventually paved the way for the legendary 7.3 Power Stroke. While modern diesels have gotten more powerful and more high-tech, the 6.9 remains a favorite for those who value simplicity, durability, and practicality. I mean, whether you're swapping it into a classic Bullnose or keeping your existing IDI on the road, this engine is a testament to Ford's commitment to rugged, practical performance and their ability to work with other vendors. It may not be the fastest or most powerful diesel ever made, but when it comes to getting the job done with minimal fuss, the 6.9 really, it's pretty hard to beat. So there you go. That's everything that I know or pretend to know about the 6.9-liter IDI diesel engine. Now look, I am not generally a diesel guy, so I did a lot of research for this video, and the great thing is that I learned a ton. I hope you guys did too, and if you did, just drop me a like and a subscribe. It really does help me out. And hey, if you've got an IDI or you've ever thought about swapping one in or done a swap, drop me a comment below and let's talk about it. I read every single comment, even the mean ones. As always, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, gripes, internet ramblings, stick them below. And thanks again so much for watching, guys. We will see you next time.
She's rough around the edges, but she's doing fine. Tinkering away, getting things to shine. That Bullnose garage, she's considered divine. Thanks again for watching. We will see you next time. Thanks again for watching.